Welcome back to day 9 of my 31 days of Halloween themed drawing tutorials right here on YouTube. In today's new video, I'm gonna show you how you can draw this spooky cauldron from start to finish, step by step, no time lapse, all in real time. So if you wanna follow along with me and draw this, keep watching. So let's draw a cauldron. Starting out, I'm using a 3000 by 3000 300 DPI canvas. For my brush to begin with, I am just going to use just my standard inker brush from my cartooning set. And for the color palette, once again, I've already got this made up. You can actually follow along with the exact colors that I'm using by downloading this color palette off my website. I will link it in the description below. If you go to bjdell.com and under the YouTube reference link section, you can actually save this JPEG. It'll save to your camera roll, go up to the wrench icon, go to add, insert a photo from your camera roll. It'll bring it into Procreate as a separate layer, and then you can go through and just long press on each of the colors as we go through the tutorial. So let's get started. First thing I'm gonna do is go to my colors, and I'm gonna go to this gray. That's gonna be the start of our cauldron. So you'll see I'm on the first layer here, and we're just gonna draw a circle, holding down with one finger, and then pressing the other one down locks it into a perfect circle. Shrink it down just a tad, and then we're gonna drag and drop the color in. So that's gonna be the base shape of our cauldron. I'm gonna go up here to the arrow here, and I'm gonna adjust this. So I'm gonna bring it here towards the center and just make sure it's in the middle. So there we go, we've got that locked in. So now let's go ahead, I'm gonna come down here and we're gonna give it some legs here at the bottom that it can sit on. So to do that, I'm gonna go up to my layers here. I'm gonna make a new layer. I'm gonna drag and drop this layer behind, and we're just gonna draw just kind of like a rounded off triangle here at the bottom. So that's gonna be the left leg. So we're gonna go back up to our layers, and we're gonna slide that to the left, and we're gonna duplicate it. So now we've got two of the same here. We're gonna go back up to the arrow, and we're going to flip it horizontally, making sure that snapping is turned on. This will allow us to slide it, and you'll see those blue lines. Make sure that it's lined up correctly. So now we've got a left and a right. Now that we've got those done, we can go ahead and pinch these together, or you can also click on it and select merge down. So let's go ahead and give it the opening here. So to do that, let's go ahead and use the same circle that we've got here. We'll slide that one to the left, and we will duplicate. So now we've got two of the same. So we're gonna go back up to our arrow here to transform this. And with freeform selected, we're just gonna drag this up right to about there. So that's gonna be the start of the opening there, where all the fun stuff is gonna be inside. So now we need to actually make the opening itself. So to do that, let's go ahead and slide this one to the left, and we're going to duplicate that one. So now we've got two of those, but we need to change the color of this one. So to do that, let's go back up to our colors here, and the second one here to the right on that top row, I'm gonna select that and drag and drop it in there. Of course, that's a little bit too big, so we need to adjust the size of this one. So let's go to the arrow here, and we're just gonna kind of drag in from the left and the right, and then up and down as well. Get that centered. Up just a tad bit more. And that looks pretty good there. So we've got the opening started here. Let me zoom in here just a tad bit. So now let's go ahead and start to get the contents of the cauldron in there. So to do that, let's go ahead and go up to our layers once again, and we're gonna make a new layer. And this one, we're going to touch and set to clipping mask. So everything we draw on this layer is not gonna go outside of what we've got colored in on this darker black section here. So now that we've got that set up, let's go back up to our colors, and let's select this green. So that's going to be the inside part here. So we can just kind of draw this around and fill it in. And this, we want to make sure it doesn't come out too far. This might be a little bit easier too if you go up to the brushes. If you are using this set, the standard inker streamline will give you a little bit more control over the actual line there. So that looks pretty good. I might move it just a little bit by going to the arrow here and just kind of pulling it to the side. All right, so we've got the inside of the cauldron done. So let's add some bubbles coming out of here now. So to do that, let's go ahead and make a new layer. And then we're just going to draw some circles around here for these bubbles kind of floating up out of the container or the cauldron. And with this, we're just going to vary the sizes. Doesn't have to be exact here. So if you want to put them in different areas or different sizes than what I've got, I'm just going to make the ones closer to the actual cauldron bigger, and then they're kind of gonna get smaller as they go and float up. Maybe a couple more here. All right, so we've got the bubbles coming up there. I think those look good. Now I kind of want some bubbles down here as well. So to do that, let's zoom in here pretty far. We're going to go ahead and go up to our layers again. I'm going to go to this layer 5, which has the inside part of that green. And then we're going to go ahead and make a new layer here. And for this, so we can see it, I'm going to switch here. And I'm just going to go just white right now. And this will make sense here in a second. So I'm going to draw just some circles down here. These are going to be green, but I want them white right now just so I can see what's going on. If I had these that same green color, you're not going to be able to make sure that these look like you want them to because it's going to blend in too much. And we're going to do some erasing on this too here in a second. And we want some nice smooth erase lines so that these things look perfect. And if they were the same color, that would be almost impossible to do. So add one more here. All right, so now I'm going to go back up to my eraser and I'm going to go once again to my standard inker streamline and zooming in here. I'm just going to cut off the bottoms of these just so they look like they're bubbling up out of the stuff that's in the cauldron. Once again with these, just making them different sizes. It's really important, like I said, that we did that white so we can see. If we had just these that exact green, we're not even going to be able to see. But this is going to help us later for the shading and the highlights. So now that we've got those done, we can go ahead and long press our green color here. And then I'm just going to fill these back in. Holding down my pencil, I'm going to slide to the right. Oops, not enough room on the edge of the canvas there. So slide to the right, and it's going to fill those in. Try that again. That's one way you can do it, or you can also just go to this layer and select this layer and then fill. That'll also fill them in too if you're having problems with that color drop threshold there at the top. So we've got those in there. Let's go ahead and add a spoon in here too. So to do that, let's go up here and on layer 5 here, I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to go up to my colors and I'm going to choose this lighter brown color here. Actually, let's go with the darker brown. Layer 8 above that green. Once again, standard inker streamline. And I'm just going to kind of drag out the shape of a spoon here. Doesn't have to be perfect the first time you do it because we're going to do some erasing as well. Now that we've got that, let's go ahead and pull this in here. Just have it kind of remove there a little bit. I think I'm going to drag it down just a tad bit. There we go. And if you don't like the shape here at the end, you can also just erase around that. If you want it to have a little bit more of a round curve, totally up to you how you want this thing to look. Easier said than done sometimes to get this to be a perfect round curve like that. So there we go. I think maybe I might have it squared off even more. Still have it round, but have it squared off towards the top. It's maybe a little bit more spoonish. This is just going back and forth trying to get those lines right. All right, so that looks pretty good. We can go ahead and add kind of the side to this. So if we go back up here, let's go ahead and make a new layer. And we'll set this as clipping mask as well. Going back up to my colors, I'm going to select that lighter brown. And we're just going to pull in that lighter shade here on the side. Just kind of show that that has some dimension to it. So it's going to be kind of the side peeking through there. So that looks good. So pretty much done with the base colors, the color flats, if you will. So now we can go ahead and start actually going in and adding some shadows and highlights to this. So starting out here, I think I want to start with the cauldron. I'm going to have the light source kind of coming in from this side here. So shadows are going to be on this left-hand side. And to start out here, I'm going to go to this gray on the second row. And I'm going to go ahead and go down to my layer 1. With this, you've got two different options here. You can add a new layer. You can set this to clipping mask. And then you can color the shadows on a separate layer. That gives you the opportunity to go back and adjust the opacity of the layer of shadows. Or if you're in a position to where you don't have a lot of layers to work with, you can also alpha lock your main layer and then add the shadows and the highlights directly to that. Of course, there you're not going to be able to go in and make any adjustments to the opacity or change anything around because it's going to be on that base layer. But it's totally up to you. I think I'm going to go ahead and alpha lock these. And then I'm going to go back up to my brush library. And for this, I'm going to go over to my texture pack and I'm going to use specks for this one just to give some texture to this cauldron. So once again, on the big round circle, got that alpha locked. And then I'm going to go in and just real lightly start to pull around this back side here. Kind of going a little bit heavier in the back and kind of fading it up towards the front. Same thing here underneath that lip. And you'll see this is why we did all these on separate layers, because as soon as we start adding some shadows to this, you see it makes that lip pop out. It looked like it was all one piece before. Now it's obviously two separate pieces, and it's super easy to do it that way. So now that we've got that, I'm going to darken it up just a tad bit by going back into my color palette and going to black. We'll just get a little bit darker here on this back side, a little bit darker there. And then going down then to the legs here, we need to go pretty heavy underneath. Oops. See, I didn't set that to alpha lock yet, so I need to do that. Alpha lock that. Going down pretty heavy underneath these legs so that once again, you can tell those are setting underneath and they're also separate from the cauldron body. And that's why we did those on a separate layer too. So you can see, look like all one piece. Now it's obviously two separate pieces. Super easy, super quick way to kind of add that three-dimensional quality to the designs. Just gonna build that black up a little bit more here. And then I'm gonna go back in here with just the regular gray, making a bigger brush here. I'm just gonna kind of fade this a little bit more. So it's got that circular kind of sphere quality to it. And then I'm going to go ahead and select my white and then add in some highlights here on the side. This, I don't want it to get too crazy bright, so I'm going to be really careful here to make sure that I don't go too hard. And then going real small here, I'm going to go ahead and kind of add in some circular ones there, so it's got a little bit more shine to it. So there we go. Now let's go ahead and kind of work on this top part too. So we'll start here with the brim layer 1 on top of the cauldron here. And to do this, once again, need to set that to alpha lock, or if you're using clipping mask, you'll make a new layer and set it as clipping mask. So use alpha lock here and kind of drag in. I just want some texture around here. We'll switch over here to the black now and add some here in the back. That looks pretty good. And from here, the other one I'm going to switch to is the brush library. Everybody's got this one. It's just the regular airbrush, and I'm going to use a soft airbrush here. Then I'm going to go back into the white color, getting this fairly small. I'm going to kind of airbrush the lip around here to kind of bring it out. And this is just going to be back and forth trying to get the brush the right size. And there we go. A little bit smaller. You'll see I just kind of want this lip coming around here. So once again, just looks a little bit more three-dimensional. And I'll kind of blend that back in with some gray here if I get it too thick. All right, there's that. Once again, going back to my black, just kind of with that airbrush still, just kind of airbrush some back here too, back behind those bubbles. Once again with this, don't want to get it too dark. Going back to my gray now to kind of drop out a little bit of that. All right, so there we go. I think this is maybe a too bright there. Just free that up a little bit. All right, so we've got that done. Let's add a little bit of a shadow here with this darker gray behind the spoon as it's coming in there. And then we'll add some to the spoon here next. So let me start with the bigger part of the spoon, layer 8 here. And I'm gonna go back up, set that to alpha lock, go back up to my brushes here, back to my texture brushes. And with this one, I think I'm just gonna use the cork one for this, just so it's not the exact same texture. And once again, I'm just on that black now. Just add a little bit there. All right, so coming along pretty good. Let's start working on these bubbles now. So let's go to layer 6, which is the floating bubbles. We'll set that to alpha lock. And we go back up to my colors now, and I'm gonna go to this darker green. And with the bubbles, I'm gonna use the airbrush for this as well, just because it's a lot softer and it'll give you a pretty realistic fade here to these bubbles. Really give them some dimension. Once again, this is just trying to find that sweet spot for the brush. Not too big, not too small. And just really lightly hitting this back of these bubbles. You'll see here I'm kind of close to that other one, so you might adjust your brush size, or you can go back in and erase. Up to you how you want to do it. Pull this up a little bit more here in the back. And this is another case, if you want to use clipping mask for this, you could go back if it is too dark and you can drop the opacity to kind of have a little bit more control. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and go to this green color here, and we're going to bring that around on the front of these. So once again, this gives it a little bit more of that three-dimensional quality. Get a little bit of that shine going on. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to white now to kind of finish this off. So we'll get some pretty bold highlights there towards the front to give off that kind of glow. So there we go. Those are the floating ones. So let's go ahead and do the ones here in the actual cauldron. We're going to use the same principle here. So once again, we're going to alpha lock this, going back up to our green, and then we're just going to start to bring these in. Same principle here, darker on this right-hand side. Press harder, starting out, not too hard though, and then just kind of let up your pressure as you go. We'll switch back to that lighter green now. Bring those in from the right, and then back to the white. This one I'm going to make a little bit smaller. You see really how it kind of builds up that realistic three-dimensional spherical quality. So we've got that. Let's go ahead now and do the base stuff in the cauldron. So we're going to alpha lock this one as well. And then we're going to go to that darker green again. And then I'm just going to start to kind of build up around the bottom here, where these are coming out of that and popping up. And you'll see this is why we used those two different colors. We went with that just white to do these so that way we can really see these. That's why we wanted that clean, clear line here at the bottom so that these really have that look like they're coming up. I'm going to go back in with white and kind of bring around some other lines here. Make it a little bit smaller for these on this side. Don't want it to look exactly like a line. I still want it to have that kind of flow to it. Go and bring some more in here. All right, so there's that. Now I'm going to go back up to the actual bubbles here, and with my eraser set to airbrushing, I'm going to go in here real light. Oops, got too big there. I'm going to erase these lines just a tad bit so it's not like a harsh line coming across. So it kind of fades a little bit more. So there's that. And then I'm also going to go into my blend here. And once again, airbrushing, soft one. And for this, we need to turn off alpha lock so that these actually fade a little bit more. Thus, you're going to have to get a fairly small brush here. You'll see this is starting to look a little more natural coming out of there. All right, so there we go. I think that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead. Last here is on, let's see, layer 5. Let's make a new layer here. And then let's go back to that regular green that we had. And then I'm going to go back to my soft airbrush. And in the back here, just going to kind of bring this up. So it's almost like this is giving off like the hazy, foggy mist of whatever's cooking in here. And we're just going to go real light with that so it kind of has that glow to it. I think it looks pretty cool. So that's pretty much it for the cauldron besides adding in some shadows here inside. So let's go back to our layer 1. This is that dark part inside here. And we're just going to add in, oops, need to alpha lock that. Just going to add in just kind of a shadow here on the inside, back. Try that again, alpha lock it. Don't think I went back far enough, there we go. Still had some coming out from when I didn't have it alpha locked. Nothing too crazy, just a little bit darker there. All right, so there's that. I think one thing left I want to do, just looking at this, layer 1, that lip, I want to add a little bit more of a highlight here to the outside. Side here. And then same thing here with the black. I'm just going to add a little bit more of black here around the bottom to make that look a tad bit more three-dimensional. This is just about getting that brush size right. Not too big, not too small. All right, so there we go. Now, I kind of want to add a background to this, make it a little bit more appealing. So now that we've got all this, let's kind of shrink it down a little bit. So I'm going to slide everything here to the right. So everything's selected, going up to my arrow here. Let me drag this up so you can see it better. Everything's selected. I'm just going to select uniform, shrink this down a little bit, and bring it down here into the middle. You'll see here the midsection's a little bit off here, so I'm gonna bring it more, just guessing. So, all right, there we go. Let's go ahead now and add a background. So for this, we're gonna go down to layer 2. We're gonna make a new layer. We're gonna drag this to the very bottom here. And I'm gonna go back up to my colors, and you'll see I've got these two blues set next to each other. I'm gonna select the darkest one first, and I'm just gonna draw, whoops, let me switch back to my cartooning standard inker. Just gonna draw a circle, locking it in here, and then I'm gonna drag and drop the color in here and pull it here towards the center. All right, it needs to come over a little bit more. Let's get it lined up there. There we go. All right, so we've got that. Now, like I showed in one of the previous videos about adding a gradient yourself, that's what we're gonna do next. So to do this, let's go ahead and select this layer. We're gonna alpha lock this. We're gonna go back up to our colors and go to this blue here. And with that selected, I'm just gonna drag a line here right in the center. And then we're just going to follow along and close that in and then drag and drop our color in. If your color drops all the way, your color drop threshold is turned up too high. So if you just slide this back to the right, or to the left, sorry, until that turns off. If it's not enough, you can slide it to the right. And then once you get all that filled in, you can let up, and that's locked in there. And then let's go ahead, and with that selected, we're gonna go up to our adjustments here. We're gonna go to Gaussian blur and select layer. We're gonna slide the Apple Pencil to the right, and you're gonna see it's gonna give us a nice little gradient inside there. So that looks good. Go ahead and lock that in. Next up, I wanna add to this. So to do that, let's make a new layer. And I'm gonna set this to clipping mask. I'm gonna go back up to my colors here, and I've got all the way to the right here. It's really hard to see on screen, I think. There's a dark, dark, dark blue. So we're gonna use for the rest of this. So with that selected, let's go ahead, go back up to our brushes, and I'm gonna go to my spooky tree brush. I showed this one off the other day in the full moon tutorial. If you guys don't have this one, you can actually download this for free. It comes with the spooky tree and the bat, totally free off of Gumroad. And of course, I'll link that in the description below. But let's go ahead and put a tree in here. Once again, I just got to play with the size. And let me go ahead, just so we can see this right off the bat. Let me make this white to begin with, just because I know it's kind of hard to see. Let's get this tree in here. Towards the back. I think that looks good. And then now what we want to do is I want to switch back to my cartooning standard inker streamline. And let's draw just kind of like a little graveyard scene in here. So to do this, if we just drag in a circle, so it's gonna, or a curve, it's almost gonna be like a hill here. connect these. And don't worry that this, you can't see at the bottom, because like I said, we're going to change these colors back. This is just so we can see them right now. And it looks like I don't have everything connected here, so try this again. Down there at the bottom. All right, so we got that in there now. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and maybe add in some, I'm gonna erase this one behind here. Let's add in some tombstones here. So I'm gonna go back up here to my brush. Just kind of pulling some tombstones around here. These, once again, however you want to do them, however you want to have them spaced and size-wise, that's totally up to you. Put some like crosses on top of this one. Bring this one around a little bit more. Just whatever little types of details you want to add. This is where you can kind of make it your own. Same thing over here. Let's add in some on this side. One like right next to that one. And then one more here off to the side. Do another cross here. Circle things here. There we go. So we've kind of got this graveyard scene background going on. Let's go ahead and now switch back to that darker blue. We're going to drag and drop and just slide that so it fills in everything. So once again, the background's really dark, so we can't see that tree right now, but we're going to fix that next. So let's go back up to our layers. Let's go to that background layer, layer 11. I'm going to switch this to white now. And I'm going to go back up to my textures. And I'm going to select that specs. This is what we did with the full moon illustration 2. This is going to kind of lighten up this background, and it's going to make it look like stars there in the back. We'll just bring this down really light, then maybe heavier here at the bottom to kind of give that glow coming up. And you're seeing that it's making that tree pop out a lot more. There's that, and I think here I want to add in just a little bit off to the side. If we go, once again, we're on white, and let me add in, let's see, actually let's switch to a different color. You see that this is really dark here from the background to the cauldron. So what I'm going to do here, let's make a new layer here, and let's go ahead and clipping mask this. And for our color, let's go to this lighter green here. We'll see what that looks like. And going back up to our brushes, I'm going to go to, once again, the airbrush, soft airbrush. We're just going to kind of pull in this from the center here. Oops. Just to kind of lighten that up a little bit more in the back and separate that so it's got that nice kind of glow to it. And of course, that's a little bit too much on the tree, but this is why I set this as a separate layer. So now we can go back in, hit N there, and drop the opacity down. So it's not too bright, not too dark. And I think that is pretty good there. So finally here, let me go ahead, make a new layer and get dark color along with my cartooning brush, standard inker, and last thing I do is just sign. All right, so there we go. Day number 9 of 31 days of Halloween drawing tutorials. Hopefully you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Helps other people see the video. Also, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell for notifications so you can get alerted when I post the new videos in the series. Got a bunch of months still left, so a bunch of drawing tutorials still ahead of us. If you guys do take part in these and draw what I feature in the tutorials, I want to see them. If you post them online, tag me at BJDell on either Instagram or Twitter. Or if you have Facebook and want to post them in the art group that I have over on Facebook, feel free to do that. Just a ton of people doing it every day. And it is called Keep Creating, a group for artists by artists. I will link that in the description below. Place where you can share your art, meet artists, give feedback, get feedback. It's an awesome place to be and want you guys to join along with us. So that's it, bjdell.com. You can also find me there, and the new podcast, Make Money With Your Art, which is kind of on hiatus right now for the month of October. So I can do all of these 31 drawing tutorials, but we'll be back November 2nd with that. So it gives you time to catch up on the previous episodes. So that's it for me. I will be back tomorrow. Will you? I hope so. If so, I'll see you then. And until next time, keep creating.